Some cabins are better left untouched. When four friends spend a weekend in an abandoned cabin deep in the forest, they discover that something sinister waits for them. Once night falls, the forest comes alive, and the nightmare begins. The trip of a lifetime. It was supposed to be the perfect weekend. Four friends, Sam, Lucy, Mark, and Emily, planned a getaway in the remote wilderness. Mark had found an old cabin for rent online, listed for next to nothing. "It'll be fun," he promised. No phones, no distractions, just us and nature. They arrived at the cabin just before sunset, driving miles through dense woods until the road narrowed to a dirt path. The cabin stood in a small clearing, its wooden walls weathered, the windows covered in grime. It looked older than they had expected. Too old. Lucy shivered as they stepped out of the car. "This place gives me bad vibes," she whispered to Emily. But Sam and Mark were already unpacking the cooler and setting up a fire pit outside. "Come on, Lucy," Sam teased. "It's just a cabin. Don't let your imagination get the best of you." Inside, the cabin smelled like damp wood and dust. There were 4 small rooms, a living area with a fireplace, 2 bedrooms, and a narrow kitchen. A staircase led up to an attic door, but when Mark tried to open it, the door was nailed shut. "Probably just storage," he shrugged, dismissing it. What they didn't know was that this cabin had a history. A dark history that was buried deep in the forest, waiting to be awakened. Strange signs. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the forest grew unnervingly quiet. The 4 friends gathered outside by the fire pit, drinking beers and telling ghost stories. Sam cracked jokes, trying to lighten the mood, but even he felt the tension in the air. After a few hours, Emily went inside to grab another blanket. When she returned, she looked off. "I thought I heard something upstairs," she whispered, "like footsteps." Mark laughed. "This place is falling apart. It's probably just the wood creaking." But Emily looked pale. "No, it sounded like someone walking." The group fell silent for a moment, the crackling fire the only sound between them. Then, just as Lucy was about to speak, they heard it. A soft thud. Then another, coming from the attic. The 4 of them froze. The thuds continued, slow, deliberate, as if someone or something was pacing back and forth just above their heads. Mark grabbed a flashlight. "I'll check it out," he said, though his voice was shaky. "No," Sam interrupted. "Let's just ignore it. There's no one up there, okay? We'll deal with it tomorrow." Reluctantly, they agreed. But as they sat around the fire, each of them felt it. An overwhelming sense that they were not alone. They tried to sleep, but the cabin was far from restful. The forest outside seemed alive with strange noises, branches snapping, leaves rustling, and every now and then faint whispers that seemed to float through the windows. It was as if the wind was trying to speak. Lucy was the first to get up. She couldn't sleep, her skin prickling with unease. She glanced out the bedroom window and gasped. A figure stood at the edge of the tree line. It was too dark to make out any details, but she could see the faint outline of someone tall and still, just watching the cabin. "Sam?" she whispered, shaking him awake. "There's someone outside." Sam bolted upright, rubbing his eyes. He grabbed the flashlight from the nightstand and shined it out the window. But by then, the figure was gone, as if it had never been there at all. The next morning, they found something unsettling, strange symbols carved into the cabin door. The carvings were jagged and crude, like runes or warnings. "Maybe it's some old hunter's code," Mark suggested, though his voice lacked conviction. Emily shook her head. "No, this wasn't here yesterday." They tried to shrug it off, convincing themselves that it was just their imagination running wild, but something had changed. The forest felt different, thicker, darker, and suffocating. The dirt road they had driven in on seemed smaller, as if the forest had crept closer overnight. Sam tried to start the car, but it wouldn't turn over. The engine sputtered and died. "It was fine yesterday," he muttered, banging the steering wheel in frustration. Mark tried his phone. No signal. They were trapped. Desperate, they decided to stay inside until morning, and then try to walk back to the main road. But as the sun began to set, the noises started again. Scratches on the windows, soft knocks on the walls, and distant whispers that seemed to come from every corner of the cabin. Then came the thumping from the attic. "Enough," Sam said, grabbing a crowbar from the fireplace. "We need to see what's up there." They pried open the attic door, and a foul stench hit them like a wave. Something rotten, old, and forgotten. Sam climbed the narrow staircase, shining his flashlight into the darkness. What he found made his blood run cold. The attic was full of old, rotting dolls, arranged in a perfect circle. In the center of the circle was something even worse, a set of bones, human-sized. Sam stumbled back down the stairs, his face pale. "We need to get out of here," he whispered. But it was too late. The forest comes alive. The cabin's front door slammed shut on its own. The windows sealed themselves, trapping them inside. The lights flickered and died, plunging the cabin into darkness. That's when the voices began. Clear now, not whispers but screams, coming from the walls. It was as if the cabin itself was alive, desperate to devour them whole. Something pounded on the windows, harder and faster. Emily sobbed as she huddled in the corner, and Lucy tried to open the back door, only to find it nailed shut from the outside. Suddenly, the walls of the cabin began to move, stretching, shifting, as if the wood was alive. The runes carved into the door glowed faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. The final standmark grabbed the crowbar and started smashing the windows, but they wouldn't break. "We have to do something," he shouted, panic in his voice. Then Sam noticed it, a loose floorboard in the corner of the room. "Help me," he yelled, prying it up. Beneath the floor was a trapdoor, leading deep underground. With no other option, they climbed down into the darkness. The truth below. The tunnel beneath the cabin was narrow and damp, the walls lined with more of the strange carvings. At the end of the tunnel, they found an altar, covered in bones and surrounded by black candles. This isn't just a cabin," Emily whispered. "It's a trap." Suddenly, the ground began to shake, and the walls of the tunnel closed in around them. A figure appeared at the end of the tunnel, a shadow, tall and gaunt, its eyes glowing like embers. It whispered their names. One by one, escape, or so they thought. They ran, scrambling back up the ladder and into the cabin, slamming the trapdoor shut behind them. The pounding on the windows had stopped, and the whispers were gone. For a moment, it seemed like they had escaped. But as they stepped outside, they realized the forest had changed. The cabin was gone. In its place stood nothing but trees, endless, dark, and silent. And when they looked back at the dirt road they had driven in on, it was no longer there. Lost forever. To this day, no one knows what happened to Sam, Lucy, Mark, and Emily. Search parties never found the cabin or the friends. But hikers in the area still report strange things. Whispers on the wind, scratches on trees, and symbols carved deep into the bark. Some say the cabin still exists, waiting for new visitors to wander too far into the forest. And if you listen closely on a quiet night, you might just hear the sounds of footsteps coming from the attic.